Faster than a J1772. More powerful than a Chatamo. Look, over there. It's a rock. It's a bush. No, it's a Tesla Supercharger.
Hello, and welcome back to E-Hermes, your electric adventure travel channel. As noted in our last video regarding charging at campgrounds and other various power sources, a link to which is below in the description, one of our subscribers has requested a video all about supercharging. So here we go. Remember, please hit the like button, hit the bell button to be notified of future content, and above all else, please subscribe so we can keep bringing this content to you. Please note that this discussion will revolve around North American standards and will be mostly related to Model 3, Model Y, long-range vehicles with a 75 kW battery pack. There are currently 4 different types of Tesla superchargers, not including Tesla destination chargers. There are a few old 120 kW chargers out there, but they are few and far between. Most common are the Generation 2 135 to 150 kW, with 150 being the vast majority of these, and the newest Generation 3 250 kW superchargers. There are also urban superchargers that charge at 72 kW.
As you can see on the screen, the navigation system shows the nearby superchargers. If they are in the darker red with a number in them, it tells you how many stalls are available. If they're the faded out, that means they're out of range, you can't get there. We are heading to the supercharger in Sheffield Village. It is 8 stalls. There are 6 stalls available. It's 150 kW max. The only level version 3 supercharger I know of around here is in Grove City, PA. 6 stalls available. It is 250 kW. So going back to the one we're going to in Sheffield Village, if you click on that, it tells us the maximum speed, it tells us how many are available, it tells you directions, what the fees are per kW hour in this case. Sometimes they're by kilowatt hours, sometimes they're by time in some locations where they're not allowed to bill apparently by kilowatt hours. It tells us it's 31.8 miles away. There is one much closer here in Macedonia, but if you see, that is first of all, there's only 1 stall available. It is also only 120 kW maximum outlet. It's kind of slow, so we try to avoid that one if we can. So we'll go to the one here in Sheffield. It is generally not that busy. Actually, having 2 cars there is kind of surprising. Another thing is, if you click on the icon here, well, it'll show you all the nearby food. I know some people are big fans of Starbucks. There's Wendy's, there's McDonald's, there's Panera Bread. And it gives you the distance from the supercharger to them. This supercharger happens to be at a Sheetz gas station and convenience store, so I usually just go in there. But if you have one other options, including, I think this one's kind of a sit-down restaurant, you could go there as well. Another thing you'll notice, it's relatively cold today. It's 50 degrees, doesn't even feel that warm, honestly, because it's kind of damp out there. If I click on the supercharger that we're going to in Sheffield, and I take directions there, it'll calculate the route for me, of course. That's pretty straightforward.
Exit 28B on the right.
It'll even tell me what to do. And I'm actually not going the most direct route, I know that.
Turn left onto Harvard Road.
What I wanted to point out was, it will precondition the battery for faster charging. So even if you're not using the navigation route planner within the car to go from station to station, when you pick which station you go to, you always want to navigate to that with the in-car navigation so that it will precondition the battery for you.
A few key points and tips. The rated speed of a supercharger is not the be-all and end-all of how fast it is. There are many variables, including temperature, how charged your battery is on arrival, other users, the battery's temperature, the maintenance of the station, and so on. While version 3 stations certainly are faster at peak speeds, you really are not at peak speed all that long.
In my opinion, the even more important feature of version 3 stations over version 2 stations is the lack of cabinet sharing. That brings us to the first key tip of supercharging. If you are at a version 2 station, rated charging speed of 150 kW or less, the pedestals are paired, with each one of each pair fed from one power supply.
Now keep left to take Interstate 90 west.
Someone asked if supercharging damages the battery. The answer is probably a teeny tiny minuscule amount. We will explain why it is so negligible shortly, but one thing that the Tesla owner's manual does state is, quote, "The peak charging rate of the battery may decrease slightly after a large number of DC fast charging sessions, such as those at superchargers," end quote. The key word here is slightly. I have read that it may increase total charge time by 5 minutes, and less than 1% of all customers experience this, so it is not much of a concern at all. The reason there is little mention of supercharging actually damaging the battery itself is the sophisticated battery management system that does many things to protect the battery from damage. While it is understandable and certainly necessary, it does affect charging speed substantially. Tesla tweaks the charging curve regularly, but a version 2 supercharger only allows peak charging from about 10% state of charge to about 25%. At 25% it starts to taper, then at 45% it tapers dramatically. Version 3 superchargers likewise only allow that super fast 250 kW rate from about 5% battery to about 12%. Then they start to taper at about 18%, and by about 45% they are down to a version 2 rate of 150 kW. So as you can see, Tesla goes to great lengths to protect the battery, so I would have no real concern if supercharging was your only option. However, this does take away the most convenient part of owning an electric vehicle, which is overnight charging while you sleep, so you awaken every morning to your vehicle charged to the level you want. If you do not have access to home charging, for instance if you have to park on a street or live in an apartment with no access to power where you park, charging at work is your next best option. If that is impossible as well, destination charging when you shop, eat out, work out, etc. is also convenient. But if none of these work, supercharging is fine for the vehicle. Because of the way the vehicle slows down the charge rate to protect the battery, it is much more efficient to charge from, say, 10% to 60% than it is from 40% to 90%. This is where I wish Tesla's onboard navigation did a better job planning for more frequent but shorter charging stops, rather than few longer charging stops. I understand their desire to minimize stops, and if you are going to sit down for a meal, by all means charge away. But more frequent, shorter stops are absolutely quicker overall than a few longer stops. A free app called A Better Route Planner does just this. It creates more but shorter stops when planning a long trip. My rule of thumb is to leave the charger when it forecasts 10% charge at the next charger during good weather, 20% during bad weather. I have pushed it as far as 2 miles of range, about 0.5% remaining when I got to my stop, but I don't recommend cutting it that close regularly. We come to you today from Sheffield Village, Ohio, just off Interstate 90, about 20 miles west of Cleveland. The next supercharger to the west is in Sandusky, Ohio, about 30 miles away, right on the way to Cedar Point. But the next supercharger to the east is clear up here in Erie, Pennsylvania, a little over 110 miles away. Now, there are other superchargers east of here in Strongsville and Macedonia, Ohio, and in Hermitage, Pennsylvania, just across the Pennsylvania border. But they are not directly on Interstate 90. So if you were going east on Interstate 90, you would want to charge here, and then you'd probably have to stop again in Erie, 'cause the next one after that is clear up in Buffalo. You back your car into the stall. Get out. the charger handle, press the button, plug it in. Blue light says it's making the connection. Flashing green light means it's charging. This is a 150 kilowatt maximum station. Because it's cold, even with the preconditioning of the battery, I'm not sure we'll quite get up to that. We're also just about halfway in the battery pack, so that's when it starts ramping down pretty substantially. So we won't get to 150, we might get to 120 kilowatts, or it might stay right there around 115, which will get us about 470 miles in an hour. Not that we're going to be here for an hour. This is an 8-stall, 150 kW facility at a Sheetz gas station and convenience store. Food, drinks, and restrooms are available within the Sheetz. There are also some other restaurants nearby, but there are some fairly busy roads to cross to get to them. This is a fairly typical layout, as Tesla locates their superchargers near conveniences in most cases, except those that are at hotels, which I really don't understand, as you can't just plug into them and go off to bed because charging is way too fast for overnight and you would be charged idling fees. This is a typical layout for a smaller installation. As I showed you, you back your car in. There are 2 stations here that are away from the curb, but that is not for you to pull in. Those are for people with trailers to be able to back in and still charge. So don't be the guy that blocks that and the guy with the trailer can't use it. You really should never walk away from a vehicle when putting in gasoline. So we have found that charging on a trip really does not add that much time compared to putting in gasoline, moving the car away from the pumps. Don't be that guy that blocks the pumps while peeing, shopping, eating, etc. Doing all of our business in the store and then leaving. So now here you are plugged in and charging. What do you do next? Well, I typically have to go to the bathroom when I'm on a road trip, so I go and do that. I may get a snack or a drink. Depending on location, time of day, and the rest of my schedule, I may even go to a sit-down restaurant and have lunch or dinner, now that we have all our COVID shots. During COVID, we would typically get takeout and eat in the car. Today, I think I may walk up to the Wendy's, which is 4/10 of a mile away. Because I arrived with a 50% charge already, and I'm only charging, I think, to about 80%, because I don't have that far to go today, I'm not really on a trip, it's only going to take 15 minutes. So by the time I were to go in, use the restroom, get something to eat, it would probably be close to done. I'm going to walk to Wendy's, and I suspect, because that's about half a mile away, that by the time I get there and back, it will be done and probably ready for me to leave. So as I suspected, by the time I walked back from Wendy's, the car was fully charged and it had shut off. Because there's no one else here, and I believe there's a 10-minute or 15-minute grace period anyhow, I'm going to take a few moments to talk about the cabinets over here and sharing. So at version 2 Superchargers, we talk about not wanting to be stuck sharing a cabinet. These are the cabinets we're referring to. These are the main power supplies. There are 4 cabinets here. There are 8 pedestals out here. There's pedestal 1A and 1B. They share one of the cabinets. Get a little closer so you can see. 2A and 2B likewise share one of the cabinets. 3A and 3B and 4A and 4B. If there's a lot of people here, you always want to try to get a cabinet that is not being shared with the other letter. So if someone's at 2A, you do not want to get 2B because you're only going to get half the power. It's not an even split, but you're going to get not very good charging speeds. Version 3 Superchargers do not have that issue, so it doesn't matter which one you grab. The other thing to note is that oftentimes, most often, 2A and 2B will be right beside each other. But you really do have to look at the labels, because in some locations it's 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, 1B, 2B, 3B, 4B. They're not always beside each other like they are at this location, although this is typical. Now, had this been busy, I chose a good location because I chose 3B, and 3B is shared with 3A. Since that's a trailer location, it probably doesn't get as much use. One last note and recommendation. While this is not a Tesla-centered channel overall, it is for now because that is what we have. We are eager to take delivery of our Rivian R1T, but I have to admit that the Tesla Supercharger network is wonderful. Rivian is going to roll out their similar adventure network, but they are also going to be able to charge at Electrify America's stations. This interchange off I-90 must be a great location because right nearby is an Electrify America charging station with 350 kW CCS, the most up-and-coming non-Tesla charging standard, which is also what Rivian will be using as well. As good as Tesla's Supercharger network is, sometimes you want other options. That is where the PlugShare app comes in. I highly recommend it, as it has Tesla and all other charging locations, sometimes even down to someone's house who will provide charging, although I have never tried that out. I will take you into the parking lot here and show you the CCS, and there's one CHAdeMO station there as well. I hope you found this informative, and I hope I answered our subscribers' question. Please leave me a comment with any other questions, and I will do my best to answer them. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the bell button so that you will be notified of our next video, which will be an overnight camping trip, sleeping in the Model Y, to Western New York. Thank you again for watching, and now let's go find these Electrify America stations. They're right over there to the left. You can't really see them with the way the camera's pointed, but we'll get to them right here. These are, it's just across the street from that Sheetz gas station we were just at with the Supercharger. There's a large grocery store here and some more fast food. There's a Cracker Barrel restaurant as well. So these are the Electrify America stations. There are two 150 kW chargers here on the end, 4 350 kW really high-speed chargers here in the middle, one more 150 kW CCS, and then a 50 kW CHAdeMO charger, which is kind of a dying, outdated standard, and relatively slow. I don't know that any cars currently made can accept 350 kW input at the highest speed, but again, I think they're planning for the future. Thank you and have a good day.